It is just a huge honor today to be podcast interviewing Brett Pierce, Stanford University graduate, successful entrepreneur, and former NFL athlete. My gosh, his NFL days are... He even has his own Wikipedia page. Brett Clayton Pierce, born January 7, 81, is a former American football tight end in the National Football League for the Baltimore Ravens and Dallas Cowboys. He played college football at Stanford. Is a former American football tight end in the NFL for the Baltimore Ravens and Cowboys. He played college at Stanford. He attended Columbia River High School, where he recorded 9 varsity letters. In football, he was a two-way player, defensive end and tight end. He was a 2-time All-State. My gosh, it just goes on and on and on. Your professional athlete days are amazing, but now Brett Pierce is CEO and co-founder of Elite Dental Alliance, an affiliate of Cain Waters and Associates. Elite is the nation's premier membership organization built specifically for the independent dental practice. With over 1,100 member practices across the U.S. and over $1.5 billion in collective annual production, Elite has created a marketplace of member-exclusive offers from industry-leading vendors, from dental office supplies to equipment to patient financing and everything in between. The Elite vendor marketplace is designed to take the guesswork and stress out of running a productive dental practice. Today, we are talking about one of the most popular topics in the dental world, the DSO movement. It's no secret the dental landscape has become increasingly more corporate over the last couple of decades, and this trend isn't expected to slow down anytime soon. While DSOs have annualized growth rates of 13 to 14%, private practices are shrinking 7% annually, according to the Health Resources Institute of the ADA. So, Brett, why is the DSO movement growing?
Well, Howard, you probably hear this stuff on a daily basis, but we interview hundreds of doctors a year. We hear all the concerns, all the questions, all the fears. There's a lot of reasons that it's growing, but it's typically 3 general categories. It's the student trends, what's happening in existing practices and the challenges they're facing, and the third part is investment options. What are people going to do with their money? And so students, and this is no secret, but students are coming out with record high levels of student debt right now. So the idea of coming out of college with $500,000 in debt and then buying into another practice for $700,000 more isn't always that exciting to everybody that coming out of school. There's based on the conversations I've been having with a lot of these doctors, there's a training gap sometimes in the schools now where there's even less focus on kind of how to run a business and what opportunities to pursue. And then this administrative intimidation. So when you're coming out of school, you're kind of being told that it's really hard to run a business. It's really hard to manage all these people. It's really hard to do payroll. When are you going to do all these things? And then who's got the biggest booth at the dental school trade shows? It's the DSOs, and they're marketing and they're explaining how they can help them with all those factors. So that combined with what's happening in the existing practices, the challenges that they face in terms of the same debt situation, administrative age, injuries, broker marketing. So marketing is a big piece of this. So we're trying to figure out why is the DSO movement, why is it growing? Why is all this happening? Well, people are marketing to these dentists like never before. There's not a day that goes by, Howard, that I don't have somebody say, hey, I got this offer from so-and-so. What do you think? That wasn't the conversation 10 years ago. That wasn't happening quite as prevalently. And the reason that that's happening more and more often is the investment options out there. So one of the big reasons this is happening is because all this money is flooding into dentistry. And you know this better than anybody, Howard. So my background, I also spent about 7 years in private equity. And so we used to buy and sell small businesses very similar to the ones that dentists are running now. And the investment options always determine what the multiples are going to be for the businesses that you buy. So if there are better things for me to do with my money as a private equity firm or as a rich guy or whatever it is, I have these other options. But right now, as volatile as the market is, with all the instability with this election year, and everybody freaks out about the election year, what else could I do with my money that would be better than investing in medicine and in dental at this point? Because it's still a little bit green. I mean, are you hearing anything different, Howard? I mean, what do you kind of think of? Those are kind of broad topics, but we hear it every single day here, and it's just kind of happening.
So There, I mean, my gosh, you said so many profound things. I don't even know where to start. You know, there are several contributing factors to DSO movement growth. On one hand, you have, I mean, there's so many things.
The most curious thing, Howard, is even 5 years ago, the narrative was, I have these problems to solve as an independent practitioner. How am I best going to solve these problems? And recently, those conversations have turned to, I wish I didn't have to solve these problems. And as soon as you go down that road, it's kind of hard to come back. And we used to buy businesses the same way, Howard. We were trying to buy businesses. We'd say, hey, you want to sell your business? No, I love business. Business is great. I love what I do. I love my staff. Everything's great. Cool. Here's a letter. We're interested in buying it. 6 months later, hey, you want to sell your business to us? No, everything's great. It's awesome. Fast forward 18 months, the secretary quit. The warehouse needs repairs. It's raining. People aren't showing up. Whatever the case may be. Hey, where's that letter? I want to talk to this guy. Maybe I don't want to deal with these problems anymore. And so people are being told that they don't want to do these things now, that they don't want to solve these problems when in the past they were just trying to figure out the best way to solve them. And that's a really critical shift in mindset. And I think that's probably happened. Did that happen to you at some point, Howard? I don't know.
I hear both sides of it. On the one hand, there's two dental schools down here on each side of Phoenix. There's AT still in Mesa, and there's one in Glendale, Midwestern. And my gosh, some DSOs coming in there with free pizza at lunch every week. And if you show up there with a bunch of free pizza and they talk doom and gloom, Howard's old school. And when he was little, every pharmacist owned their own store. Now they all got rolled up into Walgreens and CVS. But then I come back and I say, okay, well, these schools have been here a decade. And when they come out, they all go jump into a DSO and they're not happy and they don't last a year and they job hop from year to year to year. And usually it's about 5 years. They've had 5 jobs. They're so miserable that now they've lost their fear of being a private own my own office because they're living in hell. They're no longer afraid of getting ran over by a cement truck. So they're like, I'm so miserable. You can shoot me. I'm going to open up my own dental office because I'm so sick of working for someone else, which I think is indicative of any career where you have 7, 8, 9, 10 years of college. If you want a bunch of people to take orders, you need to be a Marine Corps captain and have a bunch of 18-year-old kids. But by the time all those 18-year-old Marines have 8 years of college each, you can't even get them to agree that today is Monday.
That's true.
So I think there's going to be, I think there's different markets, just like there is Chevy, Pontiac, Olds, Buick, Cadillac. The DSO market right now, I hear everything from 12 to 18%. How big do you think it is now, and how big do you think it will get?
Well, it's going to keep getting larger. I mean, I think you're right. It's 12 to 18%. I think the latest number is about 17%. It's going to continue growing, and it probably should. And a lot of these, I think just in the past 6 years, they've gotten a lot better in terms of doctor and patient experience. I don't think it's these dental factories. I think the popular thought is, corporate dentistry, it's a bunch of dudes in suits with MBAs telling me how to do this, this, and this, and they're just looking at a P&L, and they'll either fire me or not fire me based on that P&L. And to some degree, that is true because you have investors involved. But I also think, Howard, that a lot of these DSOs, the good ones, are still really taking care of their doctors to a certain degree. So I'm not anti-DSO. I'm not pro-DSO. I'm whatever's best for that particular doctor. We help facilitate sales to DSOs all the time. We help fight the DSOs all the time. We're kind of on both sides of the fence. But I think it's going to continue growing, and it probably should continue growing, Howard, because dental's a little bit behind some of the other industries in terms of sophistication. I think you probably would agree with that. And the DSOs are bringing a lot of sophistication to the dental space in terms of customer experience, in terms of technology, in terms of software, in terms of tracking and analyzing the practice as a business, not just as your personal kind of bank account. And so I think because of those factors and all the factors we listed before, it's not going away. But that doesn't mean that's a bad thing necessarily for the independent practice. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing for the DSOs. I mean, these are just businesses. These are successful businessmen and successful financial guys that are finding good places to invest their money. And what better place than dentistry right now?
Yeah, and they can help dentistry. We can learn a lot from dentistry. They're
Yes.
better on answering their phones. You can call Aspen at 2:00 in the morning, and a human answers the phone.
That's crazy, man.
And so, how do you think corporate dentistry can help private practice?
Well, kind of some of the things I said. So if you are willing to adapt, and if you are willing to grow, and if you're willing to learn, and if you're willing to treat your practice like a business in some degree and still take care of the patients, you are going to have a leg up on the DSOs and all the independent practices who aren't willing to do that. So it's kind of a natural selection argument a little bit. If the DSOs are growing at this rate, and they're growing at that rate because of acquisition, that means just by definition that there's going to be less independent practices in the future because there'll be more DSO practices. If a patient prefers an independent practice, probably do if they were asked, there's going to be less options for them to choose from. And if you are one of those remaining independent dentists, that means your market share is going to have the opportunity to be even larger. That being said, you better get your stuff together and understand that this is coming, and you can't just put your head in the sand because you have a shingle up on that your dad's had and your granddad's had and your granddad's granddad had. That's just not how it works anymore, because the guy next door is offering free whitening. He takes every insurance you've ever seen, and they'll get you in the same day and get you out the same day. So there's all these different things that you need to pay attention to if you want to compete. But if you're willing to compete, and if you're willing to continue to focus on that patient experience, I think the independent practice, the ones that are willing to do that, are going to absolutely blow it up, and I think they're going to be awesome. And I get an opportunity to deal with a lot of the highest end dentists and doctors in the country every day, and these are the guys who are leading that charge to say, hey, I'm not just going to sit here and let this whole thing happen around me and be scared of all these words and all these marketing terms and MBAs and whatever else all this stuff is. I'm gonna take action. I'm gonna take the best of both worlds. So my whole goal with this business in this conversation is you get me all fired up now, Howard. See what's going on here. You can have the best of both worlds. You can run a business like a DSO can run a business, but you can also take care of the patient like the independent practice is famous for. The patient experience is an asset for the independent practice. Sometimes the DSOs look at it as a liability or an expense. And so that's kind of the primary difference. So just if you're willing to change and adapt, the world is your oyster, so to speak, if you're the independent practice. But if you're not, you're going to probably go away, and that's probably good for dentistry and good for the patients.
Well, the easiest thing to fight back is, the number one complaint here in Phoenix is every time I go there is a different doctor.
Yes.
I went in there and the dentist said I had 7 cavities, and I went back to get the first one done, and he no longer even works there. And the next guy didn't even know what was going on. And so just the fact that you don't have a different dentist every time the patient walks in, you can be a huge patient experience. But like Aspen, I lost a great patient to Aspen, and I tip my hat to Aspen. When you come into my office for a denture reline, you got to come in the morning, you got to drop it off, you got to go spend the day without your teeth, and then I send it to the lab. And then, Aspen put the lab in the office. And, so now my buddy goes to Aspen, and while they're relining, he just sits out there in the waiting room and, plays on his smartphone. And it's like, I'm glad Aspen is there for him, and I'm glad they did this. I have the opportunity to put in a lab. Same thing when Smiles Drug came out. The orthodontist wanted to see them every month for 2 years. And Smiles Drug Club said, well, we're just going to do it for 14 months, and we're going to give you all the trays a day. I already know orthodontists that are adapting, saying, well, I really don't need to see you every single month. Why don't I give you a tray for every 2 weeks for 2 months at a time? So when you come in, I'll give you today's tray and the next 3. And so they're cutting out appointments and speeding up. So I think competition at the end of the day, it's always for us. And in Phoenix, Arizona, the metro is 4 million. I don't know if it's bigger or smaller than Dallas. Do you know which? I know.
I think we got you by a little bit.
Are you talking about the Cowboys record or the Arizona Cardinals record? But both.
I don't know. I think they're both pretty close, man.
And the bottom line is on Sunday, I mean, if you got in a if you fell off your bicycle and broke your leg, the ambulance will pick you up. They'll take you to the hospital. But if you fell off your bike and broke out your front 2 teeth, there's not one dentist in Phoenix, Arizona that would be open on a Sunday. I tell people if you're going to get hurt on the weekend, just make sure it's not your teeth. So I think that this competition, I mean, it is embarrassing as a dentist that 8% of all emergency room visits in the United States of America are odontogenic in origin. And the reason is because at 5 o'clock, there's not a dentist in Dallas. And after Thursday at 5, there's no dentist in Dallas. And so when people say, well, dentists aren't real doctors, well, you're absolutely right, because a real doctor would be in the hospital 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In fact, I don't know. I still can't figure out why a DSO hasn't put a location in every emergency room across the United States. Because anytime I've ever gone to the emergency room since I've been a dentist with 4 boys, I raised 4 boys, and now I have 5 grandchildren, 4 of which are boys. So how many times do you think I've been to an emergency room? Yeah. And you know how many times I stood up in the waiting room and said, hey, how many people are here because of a dental reason? And every time it's just like the numbers say, it's 5 to 10%. And I'm like, well, why isn't the number one DSO dentalemergencycenter.com and go rent someplace next to the emergency room? Because I would want my grandchildren, if they knocked out their 2 front teeth, to be able to go to a dentist at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever. But, and then the other thing is attitude. I mean, you know that more than anything being in the NFL. I mean, dentists will work at a DSO with this horrible attitude, and I'll say, you're working for a guy that owns 500 to 1,000 offices. Please tell me the genius business knowledge you've learned. And he hasn't learned anything. He just sat there hating it for a year. And then other people I know, I say, well, what did you do after you left? Well, after 1 year of working for McDentals, I found the best regional manager girl, and she's just great. And I talked her into leaving with me, and we set up my own, and she brought, 5 years of systems from McDentals, and they're doing, like $2 million the 3rd year. And I'm like, there you go. So you know what that is? You know what that is, Howard? That's all those things you just mentioned are listening. They happen because you're listening to your customers. The DSOs and just regular businesses listen to their customers. What matters to you? What are you? Oh, well, you want weekends, you want Fridays, you want same day treatment. We're listening to the customers when it's easy in, very smart, educated people, which these dentists are. It's always been your way that the patient has to adapt to, right? Now the reverse is happening, and people are seeing that I actually like this. I don't want to be at somebody's beck and call. I want you to be at my beck and call. And I think that transition happened probably 10 years ago in medicine. Now, I don't want to talk to you. I want you to text me when my appointment's happening, and I want to come in on Friday or Saturday morning, or I want same day treatment, or I want it instead of going to the emergency room and having some guy put some wooden teeth in my mouth. I actually want a dentist there. They're listening to their customers, and that's probably the biggest lesson of all of these things: being willing to adapt to your customers on the sales side and on the patient experience side. The patient experience, the independent practice can dominate that. All those things you talked about are basically patient experience. If you were to walk into, when you're a patient anywhere, Howard, I mean, how would you want to be treated? You want an appointment whenever you want one. We actually have a lot of dentists that are doing these urgent care centers too, Howard. I don't know if you've seen many of those. Like, they're turning their practice during the day into a urgent care center at night, or they have a kid come in and work their practice. Same equipment, same lease. It's producing no revenue at night. Maybe you can get some out of it. I'm really proud of my dentist, because where I'm in Phoenix, the dentist and the chiropractors and the veterinarians, they try hard. I mean, they're really trying to hard. Yeah. But I go into any of my MDs, any physician's office, it's still got the glass door. You go sign in. She opens a door, hands me a deal without making eye contact. Yep. I'm supposed to sign that. I'm always going to wait 1 hour in the waiting room. And then when I go in there, the doctor's not even going to acknowledge that he's an hour late. I mean, the physicians are so bad that they make the vets are the best. I mean, I think the veterinarians, I mean, my gosh, they're just, I wouldn't want to be a vet anymore. And I want to be a pediatric dentist, which are really the veterinarians of dentistry. I don't want to work on people who can't talk or communicate. But I'm glad someone does that. But, if they can't keep a doctor for a year, how can we not beat them on the customer experience?
Yeah, you have to. All you got to do is think about how you want to be treated. The same exercise that you just went to, and all the things. A lot of the things that affect the patient experience don't cost a lot of money. Answer the phone. Answer the phone the right way. Make eye contact when you come in there. Open the door. Say hello. How would you want to be treated if you're going to buy a Mercedes or going to buy whatever? That stuff doesn't cost a whole lot of money, Howard, but how much would it affect your experience at the medical office? The only problem is the medical office is a little bit different because, insurance pays for, that's a whole different situation, but insurance pays for everything. Your patients are still paying for most of the work that you do, so it's even more important that you treat them the right way. Same with vets, right? So that patient experience is, if you get outclassed in marketing, if you get outclassed in financial analysis, if you get outclassed in business operations, that's one thing. You should never get outclassed in terms of patient experience, ever. There's no excuse for that. Some of these offices still have everybody's gone from 12 to 1, right? Somebody needs to be there from 12 to 1.
Yeah,
right?
when they work 8 to, just basic software on your phone. When does the phone start ringing? I mean, we put software on because anybody who delivers your cable, for our state, it's Cox Cable. Yeah. And you're in Texas. It's at what's the big?
Well, there's Suddenlink, there's DirecTV. We just put like tinfoil hats on these Longhorns, and they just walk around, and we get
there's a big one out there. What's the real big one in Texas? Because they're rolling in here now from Texas.
A big cable company.
Yeah.
What
is it, Kyle?
Oh, Suddenlink, maybe? No.
But anyway, yeah.
Carter.
No, it's the connector, iConnect or. But anyway,
I don't know.
You just put some software on there. When is your phone ringing? And basically, every dental office I've seen, they start ringing at 6:30 in the morning to about 6:30 at night, Monday through Thursday. It's about 7 to noon on Friday. It's about 8 to 12 on Saturday, and then they'll go in there and they don't even start answering the phone until 8. Well, they have 2 girls there. Why doesn't one girl come early, take a lunch early? And the other girl come an hour later, take a lunch later, and stay later, and they can just answer more phones. But, I've been going to Dallas. Well, you're in Plano, Texas. I've been seeing Daryl Cain since in the late 80s. That's why it was so sad to see that you were born in 1981. Oh, my gosh. That one hurt. But I would say that since Daryl... Cain started that. I don't even know what year he started that, but it's been going a long time.
About 81.
It's about 81. He waited till you were born, and then as soon as you were born, he opened it up. But I think one of the biggest problems is the dentists still don't know their numbers. I mean, it's been 32 years, and you ask a dentist, well, what is your, how many incoming phone calls did you have last month? I don't know. Well, you just said you did a big marketing campaign. Did it increase your incoming phone traffic 10%? I don't know. What is your return on asset for last year? Your return on equity? I don't know. What is labor? I don't know. I mean, and then they come out of school, $285,000 student loans. They think, and I'm going to ask you, they think, well, to be a really good dentist, I need to buy a CAD cam or a $100,000 CBCT or a $100,000 laser. They make 3 decisions. They just doubled their student loan debt. And then to buy a practice is $750. But what is it? And no offense to you at all, but the NFL players, they don't know their numbers either. I hear that half of the NFL declares bankruptcy 5 years out of school. So is it just that football players love the game, dentists love surgery, and neither football players or dentists like to see the math, the numbers? I mean, do you see any parallels between the NFL and dentists with not knowing their numbers?
I see what you did there, Howard. That's pretty good. Well, I guess there are some parallels. The difference is, I guess, right out of school, dentists incur a huge amount of debt. When football players right out of school incur a huge amount of money. So, then it's just kind of a contest to see who can piss it away the fastest, I think, at that point. And I think NFL players probably win in the short term. So, yeah, I mean, knowing the numbers is very, very important. And unfortunately, everybody, it's really easy to say, oh, dentists are bad business people. Dentists are bad business. Everybody likes to say that. Everybody likes to lean on that as a crutch. Well, I'm going to tell you, Howard, like almost all of the smartest, brightest, most sophisticated minds that I've met in my life are in some way related to the dental profession. These people are brilliant. And it's not that they're bad business people necessarily, or that they can't be good business people. They're the main producer of this business. So they're busy you're only making money when your hands are in somebody's mouth, right? So if my hands aren't in somebody's mouth, I'm not making any money. Therefore, I want to have my hands in somebody's mouth as often as possible, which means I am producing from 8 to 5 or 6 or whatever, 4 or 5 days a week. I probably don't feel like analyzing the numbers or running my payroll reports at 6 o'clock or 6:30 on Thursday after I've done 15 fillings that day and listened to 16 parents yell at me about the price. I get it. The guy who digs the holes doesn't typically run the construction company either. Unfortunately, that's the situation that you guys are in. So I don't believe that doctors and dentists can't be good business people. I think they can. They just need to be able to understand what tools are available to them. They need to understand how it matters. The days of just running your practice based on your bank account and your schedule, those days are over. It's easy to do. We see here a lot, business is up. That's great. The bank account's better. Maybe there's some tax implications. Maybe there aren't. That's a whole other conversation. But if we can find ways to better understand the business, and if we can find ways where it doesn't take away from our time to produce, that's probably I'm kind of a data guy, and so the analytics of the practice, kind of like you talked about, Howard. How can I manage something that I can't measure? Right? It's kind of the old adage, and you do need to know your numbers. You need to know more than just your new patient numbers, more than just your production numbers. How about net new patients? How many new patients am I getting versus how many am I losing? There's a hole in the bucket somewhere, Howard. I don't know. And so why are they falling out? What's happening? Is it a scheduling problem? Is it a treatment acceptance problem? What's the sales cycle in this practice? What are all these things that are happening? Because at the end of the day, and I kind of say this a lot, but it's, if you're running if you're the dentist in the dental practice, it's your life and it's your practice. If you don't care about it and you don't care about your financial future, that's fine. But there's some pretty easy things you can do to analyze your numbers and to understand where you should apply your time and where you shouldn't. I mean, how much time did you spend on that, Howard, on those kinds of things?
It's the priority. I mean, I'm a dentist. I would rather pull 4 wisdom teeth and go golf. There's no questions asked. I'd rather retreat a failed root canal with a broken file than do a root canal on the front tooth. Just like I'm sure when you played for the Cowboys, you didn't want to play the local Plano high school football team. I mean, I love it, but I know that everybody that owns 1,000 dental offices, they're either not a dentist or they haven't done dentistry for 25 years. So if you spend all your time working with your hands, then you're not going to spend any time working on the business, and you got to work on the business. And the other thing you just said, which I thought was another problem back when Daryl started Cain Waters, is you just said sell dentistry. They even tell you that they don't want to sell dentistry. They even tell you they're not a salesman. They're very honest. Just like my oldest sister is a Catholic nun. She'll tell you she's not the drinking partying type. You know what I mean? And she doesn't ever plan on being it. My dentist friends tell me they don't ever want to sell dentistry. They don't want to learn treatment plan presentation. So it's a hard group of people to coach into selling dentistry, presenting treatment, watching their numbers. In fact, some people even tell me that it's gross. They're like, well, I don't want to. In fact, there was a big argument this weekend because some guy said, well, I'd rather be a dentist. This is what he said. in some socialist communist country because I just want to get paid an X amount and do the dentistry that on you that I would want to do on myself, and I shouldn't have to be bothered with any economies. And the other guy says, so you're a Karl Marx, you're a socialist, you're a communist, what are you? And I'm like, no, it's just a dentist. He just hates business. He hates sales. He's not interested. Is that what's fueling the DSOs? Just so many people with that mindset?
Yeah, there's a lot of it. It's kind of like this, how can I relieve any of this administrative burden that I have, or all these things that make me uncomfortable? Can someone else please do all these things for me? Just like you said, I want to do dentistry. You're really comfortable. You're really comfortable doing what you do, and you're uncomfortable with some of the other things. So like, how can I get back into my comfort zone, which is an easy trap to fall into? Next thing you know, you're an employee. If you want to be an employee, that's completely fine. I don't know that you started your business because you wanted to be an employee or not, but that's what's going to happen. And honestly, these DSOs are great at these administrative kind of cocoons that they'll put you in. And so if your main complaint about dentistry is the administrative stuff and the numbers and I just want to produce and go home or whatever, that's a really good option for you at that point. I don't think it makes a whole lot of financial sense sometimes, but that's kind of what this marriage with Cain Waters that Elite Dental Alliance has. You know, Cain Waters is the best dental financial minds in the country, with some of the best dentists in the country also. And so nobody is immune to wanting to hide from kind of these numbers. And so Cain Waters is going to help you understand what's happening in your practice, help you understand all the different data points that hit your practice and all the things, how they affect what matters most, which is your financial future, your retirement, or whatever your financial goals are. And Cain Waters can identify problems in the practice that exist. Elite Dental Alliance helps solve those problems. So like, hey, this is too high, this is too low, this is off, you're in the top 99, you're in the 99th percentile and overpaying for whatever it is. Here's the solution. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? So we work really well together. So you're going to come in here and get your financial life looked at. Every dollar in, every dollar out of your personal and professional life. How does that tie into the efficiencies that we can gain through the Elite Dental Alliance program in your practice? So the inception of this program was built to support the Cain Waters practice and help them better understand how they can solve some of these problems, and getting people to understand your scope of understanding of your ability to understand these things. Howard, you can understand all of these things. The problem is most of these dentists only hear practice advice from commissioned sales reps, and so that may or may not be, always the best advice. It may be, but there are a few things that we've kind of noticed over the thousands of practices that we've sat down and talked to about kind of the best ways to help the independent practice kind of thrive and do some of the things that can help them keep the edge. And obviously the first one is patient experience. The patient experience is your moneymaker. That is by far the most important thing in each of these independent practices. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. I mean, when you hear somebody say, I love my dentist. Okay, why do you love your dentist? I have not heard one person recite to me the degrees that they have on their wall, or tell me about any dental technicalities. It's because he's nice and the hygienist remembered my son's name, or whatever it is, right? Those are the patient experience thing, the consistency of care. Try to keep your care as consistent as possible. What's the biggest problem with Aspen or whoever you were mentioning earlier, Howard? You're going to see somebody different every day or every time you go in. That's not a satisfying patient experience, and that's an easy thing to solve for with some simple scheduling tools on your side. And then set the office up to make it feel like you'd want it to feel when you go to an orthodontist, or if you go to a medical doctor. And then follow up. The patient experience, follow-up is one of the things that I was actually shocked by when I got in dentistry, Howard, how little follow-up, how unsophisticated the follow-up is in terms of treating the patients like customers. I know it's probably a bad word to call patients customers, but you treat them like customers. So you follow up, you make sure they're okay. What else can I do for you? We have this amount of unscheduled treatment. How can we get that on the books? Call it what you want. It's a sales cycle, but these people showed up to you because they want your advice and they want your help. So give them every opportunity to enlist your services. The second biggest thing is marketing. So every kid with a laptop is a marketing guru now. Howard, every kid with a laptop in a garage in his parents' house is a digital marketing company who's going to make a website for you or whatever, and they're going to give you all kinds of acronyms and words and SEO and SEM and who knows what, and it's only going to cost you $10,000 a month, and it's going to be the best thing ever because they're doing it down the street, and you're going to get all these clicks, and you don't know what any of these words are, and so you sign up. That's the number one overspend that we see in our practices. Is I love the good marketing companies, but you got to understand what the heck they're doing for you. You know, do you want a pretty website just to have a pretty website, or do you want a pretty website because you want more patients? You know, what's the goal of all those things? What's your online reputation? You know, what are people saying about you? How are people making decisions now? You have a bunch of grandkids. How old's your oldest grandkid, Howard?
They are, my gosh, they're 1, 2. No, I got a 1, 1, 2.
Oh man, they're young.
6. But it was
Just
4 out of 5 are in Beeville, Texas.
Oh really?
Yeah, and the biggest fight they have with Grandpa is being a Houston fan over a Cardinals fan. And but we just agree to disagree. But you know what I like, but back to family, you know what I liked the most about Daryl back in the day? He started that in 1984. He was so smart. He would not take you on as a client if you didn't bring your spouse with you. And he knew that you can say, a lot of people say divorce is over a third money, a third sex, a third substance abuse, but it's really not either of those. It's about communicating about, the old man thinks it's okay to have a six-pack every night after work or whatever. They're not talking about it. And these dentists, when their spouse is not involved in the office and they hear, well, I get $1,000 for a crown. And then when he comes home and he says, I did 5 crowns a day, and the spouse saying, wow, he made $5,000. She doesn't know that $1,000 is the fee, but it's a PPO, and it's adjusted down to $650, and basically his overhead is 65%, and I really like that. But basically, the other thing I liked about Cain Waters is Dallas is a 2-hour Southwest Airlines flight away, and in 1900, healthcare was 1% of the GDP, and there were no specialties. One physician delivered your baby and amputated your foot. And by 2000, healthcare was 14% of GDP, and there were 58 specialists. If you're still using a general accountant from the 1900s who does dentists and farmers and ice cream makers and cattle farms, I mean, you're crazy. You wouldn't, if you had your retina detached, you wouldn't go to an oral surgeon. You'd go to an ophthalmologist who only specialized in retina detachment. Cain Waters only does dentist. They got, some 1,900 dentist clients around the United States. They only do dentist. And when they're going to show you the end of the year report, you're going to bring your spouse in there because if you think your student loans are bad, my student loan debt was $87,000 when I graduated from dental school. My divorce was $3.8 million cash, and I always have to do the. I haven't memorized the number, but I have to do it just to give myself an extra ulcer. If you take $3.8 million divided by $87,000, my divorce was 43 times more than the student loan. So Daryl hit it on the nut. If you think your student loans and practice purchase was a lot of money, wait till you get divorced. I mean, my God, that is nothing. So I think Cain Waters is you have to have an accountant, a CPA who only does dentistry. And if you say, well, I can't find one I'm in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. Well, then you're within a 2-hour Southwest Airlines plane flight to Dallas. And the only thing wrong with Dallas is the obnoxious Cowboys, but just don't look in that evil direction. But tell me more. And then I also like the you guys got that National Dental Placement founded in 2005 with helping young dentists find established practices and assisting in the transition ownership. But I want you to talk about you're in charge of the elite dental Alliance
Yep.
is a group
Mhm.
purchasing organization developed by Cain Waters and Associates to give the independent practice a competitive edge against corporate dental operations. Elite leverages years of industry expertise with the collective volume of its members to negotiate deep discounts on the supplies and services that our members use every day. Is that mostly with Benco? Does Benco do that for you?
No. So like our program is all encompassing. We find solutions and partnerships that basically affect every line in the P&L. So Benco is our supply partner, but right now we have over 75 unique vendor partners that provide corporate level pricing and service and all the different advantages that to the independent practice they could get with the DSO. So our goal, like I said earlier, is to give these independent practices the best of both worlds. So we want you to be able to run your practice. I want you to be able to run everything possible through your dental practice, get all the tax benefits you possibly can, be a business owner, be in charge, all these things. But I also want you to be treated like a DSO from these vendor partners. I want you to get all of the benefits reserved for these huge groups. And the pricing is not the same. The independent practice does not pay the same price as Aspen does. That's just the way it is, and it's just a simple economies of scale argument. So we bring some of the most sophisticated dental professionals with some of the largest practices in the country. We bring them all together and we say, hey, look, vendor X, vendor Y, vendor Z, we believe in your service. We believe in your product. We've vetted you out. We have all these reviews on you. We have multiple conversations. We've done a full financial analysis of your business and make sure you're financially soluble and viable option for us. We need you to treat us like a group. We need you to give us those same benefits. So all of our arrangements are corporate level arrangements. The doctors don't have to do any negotiating. There's no change basically in the operation of how the vendor treats you with their reps or with anything else, but you know that you're going to get a fair deal and the company's going to be great and the company's going to do everything they can to service you because there's 600 other customers of theirs on the back end that we're responsible for. So we know that these are the right vendors. We love our vendor partners. We're very exclusive. We don't take every vendor on the planet. We typically only have one option in each space, maybe two, because we are able to find the best option. And you're not going to come to me and ask me a question and want me to give you 14 options, Howard. You're not going to say, hey, Brett, what should I do here? Well, Howard, here's 14 options. You figure it out. Okay, well, I didn't really provide a whole lot of service there. So what we do is we take a full financial analysis of your practice. We look at your spending patterns. We look at your general ledger. What are you spending? Who are you spending it with? And how much should you be spending? Let us take you through that entire thing. It's kind of like a Costco with a personal shopper, so to speak. So it's a membership organization. You have access to all the different things that you need at Costco at pre-negotiated rates, and you can pick and choose the things that you want to buy. Ours is the same thing, but it's a dental marketplace, and we're going to help you shop through the whole organization, make sure that you find exactly what fits for you. And if there's something outside of our marketplace that's the best option for you, we're still going to connect you to them because our allegiance falls with the doctor first. And that's kind of how I do it. So we were built to solve the problems that Cain Waters uncovered. So Cain Waters, like I said, they will tell you how you are comparing to other practices. They will tell you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong on the financial and tax side. We can tell you what you're doing wrong or doing right on the operational and purchasing side. And we're going to lead you through the whole situation with a variety of different treatment plans. We have a treatment plan dedicated to patient growth. We have a treatment plan dedicated to patient retention. We have a treatment plan dedicated to purchasing optimization and overhead. We have a variety of different proprietary tools that we use to make sure that you're getting everything that you can out of the membership and that you're getting your practice set up to be as most profitable as possible, whether you want to just have a better practice or position it to sell. So that's kind of the marriage between Cain Waters and Elite, and then NDP, National Dental Placements has been a practice transition provider for years, kind of private to private sales. And recently we have gotten into the DSO space. So NDP Corporate Sales helps facilitate and analyze sales of independent practices to the corporation. So what's happening is all of these brokers and all of these DSOs are kind of carpet bombing, so to speak, our practices, and they're sending them letters. Hey, are you interested in selling your dental practice? Are you interested in selling your dental practice? I think your practice could be worth this much. I think your practice could be worth that much. I imagine that a lot of your listeners have received letters like that, either from a DSO or from a broker. These are very different transitions than when you're selling to your son, or you're selling to a friend, or you're selling to a partner. And it needs a very different type of service. And so what Cain Waters does, Cain Waters helps you identify, is this a good deal for you in your financial plan? NDP tells you, is this a good deal for you in regards to the marketplace conditions? So is it a good deal for you? Cain Waters, is it a good deal overall? That's NDP. So we found a way to, whether you want to just make your practice more efficient, get more tax savings, make it more profitable, find ways to grow. That's Cain Waters and Elite. You want to make yourself more profitable on all these areas and grow your patients and do all these different things. That's Elite. And if you're doing all those things because you want to sell or transition at the end of the day, that's NDP. So it's this ecosystem, Howard, of these three businesses kind of working together. There's no downside to making your practice more profitable. Whether you want to run it forever or sell it, it's all upside. So you might as well start thinking about that kind of stuff now. And if you do want to sell, you're going to get a higher valuation because your profitability is going to be higher because of all the tools that Cain Waters and Elite help you implement into your practice.
If I ask dentists, I want to. It's not every day you get to talk to someone who played in the NFL, but if you ask 100 dentists, and we poll them all the time, because on Dental Town, when you when you start a thread, you can start a poll. So a lot of people will say, well, half the dentists say this, and I always say, wow, I'd love to see that poll. Where's the data? They never have data. It's just something they just they think if they say it 5 times, it's true. But when you poll dentists and you say, what stresses you out the most? It's always people. It's the patient or the staff. And so many people are in Dental Town, and they're so afraid of their hygienist, and they're like, my overhead's going up, the PPOs won't give me a raise, my hygienist wants a raise. They're so afraid, and they don't want to confront the patient. And I mean, I don't want to tell a nice guy like Brett that he has 12 cavities. Yeah. So I'm just going to not present it or have the assistant do it. They don't communicate. But I notice in the NFL, there's a lot of big egos in those players, and a lot of them are on talk radio, and you got quarterbacks talking about wide receivers. Like, don't you guys play on the same team? Do you really think you should each be on a different podcast?
Yeah.
So dentists, they're introvert, they're shy. What did you learn from the NFL in getting along with players and building a team that you think a dentist should think about? And that's the question. What are in fact, you should write an article for Dental Town, lessons from the NFL that every dentist should think about. I mean,
I actually have, I've kind of started something like that, not necessarily for dentist space, but, I got to play for it's a pretty high profile group of coaches. So I started in Baltimore with Brian Billick, and then I jumped on board with the Cowboys, and Bill Parcells was there. Then I went to Chicago with Lovie Smith, and I ended up in Denver with Mike Shanahan.
Wow.
So those are 4 really prominent coaches. I think all of them, I don't think Lovie won a Super Bowl. I think he might have got second here, or he might have won. I don't know. Certainly not when I was there. But those are 4 very prominent coaches, and they all did things very differently. They were trying to achieve the same exact goal. Those 4 organizations are trying to achieve not just a similar goal, the same exact goal. They're trying to win the Super Bowl, right? And they all go about it in different ways. It's all based on the talent that they have around them. So Brian Billick was very analytical, very much a player's coach. We had all these big-time players, Ray Lewis, Deion Sanders, Terrell Suggs, all these guys on that team. He treated them very much like men, and they'd won the Super Bowl a couple of years before. And watching him take the way he managed the team was different than the way Bill Parcells managed the team. Bill Parcells' team was not quite in the best. They didn't win the Super Bowl 3 years ago. They hadn't won the Super Bowl since 1995, I think, and had a lot of younger players. So he treated them very differently, a little more of a disciplinarian. But that was based on the staff, basically the staff that he had. Lovie Smith was like the nicest guy I think I've ever met in my life. He never raised his voice. He never did anything. He was just a great, great man. And the players on his team were more mature players, and they responded well to that type of leadership. And then Mike Shanahan was kind of a mixture of all of them. And they were all very successful in what they did and the different ways they did it. But it was really interesting for me to see that from a player's perspective. And granted, I didn't absorb all of this at the time. I was still too worried about getting my head knocked off and not getting cut and all those things at the time. But afterwards, I was able to kind of process these things. And at the end of the day, all this stuff is about leadership, and all those guys tried to achieve the same goal by being leaders in a different way based on the personnel that they had. And they did that because they paid attention to the personnel and they cared about them. And they understood what mattered to these people and what didn't. A lot of times these problems that happen in these dental offices with the staff is because they're not paying attention to the staff, or they might not even talk to them. You don't have that opportunity in the NFL to just hide from these things and hide from these people. There are a lot of divas in the NFL. There are a lot of divas in dental offices. And I'm not just talking about the girls, the guys, the doctors are too, right? How do you understand your team? How do you change your leadership style based on the experience and the personalities that your team has? Are you paying attention to everybody, or are you trying to shove everybody in the same box? Because you're absolutely right, Howard. It's like, man, the old adage, if it wasn't for the customers, the employees, and the vendors, business is great, right? Everybody, it's all these people things. And I haven't heard a dentist tell me yet. I kind of like dentistry, but I got into this because I love administration. I haven't heard that yet. Maybe I'll hear it tomorrow. I don't know. And so, but it's paying attention to the staff and putting the right people in the right places. And, that's kind of a learned skill, but at the end of the day, it's your life and it's your practice. Why don't you take ownership over the people and take ownership over, how you're assigning tasks and how you're treating them. I mean, I don't know if I answered your question there, but that was the beginning of that paper that you're kind of talking about, is all these people trying to achieve the exact same goal, doing it in a different way. And they all had success, but all the situations were different. Not, you can't run your practice one way with every single staff member, Howard. You know that. Everybody's going to respond to things differently. The question is, do you care about that, or do you just want them to fit in or go home? There's kind of a balance.
So it really depends. So you're saying that these four great men were all trying to get to the exact goal, the Super Bowl,
Mm-hmm.
four different ways. So there's a lot of different ways to be a leader.
And that's, the leadership aspect, I think, is very underutilized. And the best businessmen are also the best leaders of their people in a lot of cases. Successful business people have good teams behind them that are able to, pick up the slack, or maybe they're even better than them.
So did they handle the divas differently? Because when you say divas, there's a lot of dentists that are divas, and you know who they are. They're always, you've already seen 9 pictures of them blowing a kiss in their own bathroom mirror. But when you have an employee, it's tough because everybody wants the customer experience, which you've mentioned several times. Yeah. Well, sometimes after a staff's been there 10, 20, 30 years, they're kind of an entitled diva. How do you draw the line between how do you handle divas? Did those guys handle their divas differently?
Yeah, so the football coaches absolutely did. So I was in Dallas when Terrell Owens was there, right? So his locker was actually right next to mine. And at any given moment, there were 50 reporters standing in his locker, so I couldn't even get to mine. Bill treated his star players. I mean, he treated guys like that very, very differently. So he was kind of dismissive of them, and so like publicly, but privately, Bill was always very respectful to everybody. But it also, there's always a cost benefit analysis, right? Like how good is the player or the employee? Are they worth this extra hassle, right? Because as soon as your useful life is over in the NFL, as soon as you're not quite as good, all your jokes aren't quite as funny anymore. You're the rich guy that used to have a bunch of friends that has no money now. All your jokes aren't quite as funny anymore. But yeah, they all treat them very differently, and I think the most common like diva situation in dentistry is the people who are very averse to change, that have been doing things a certain way for a certain amount of time, and they're very averse to change. And hey, I think we could do this. This could really help change our practice. But Susie or whomever is kind of against it, and they're going to give me a bunch of trouble. And so you always want to ask yourself. I always tell the doctors, ask yourself this question. Ask yourself, if he or she wasn't here, would I want to do this? Would I implement this system, or would I implement this change? And do I think it would help my practice? And what's the answer to that? Now you got to go back and analyze, well, how much work is it going to take for me to coerce the staff into doing these different things? And a lot of it and a lot of the problems have come because the staff doesn't understand the overall goal of why a change is being implemented. And so if you have a diva who wants to do one thing a certain way, he wants to run his route a certain way, but that route doesn't fit into the route tree and it doesn't help the team get to where they need to go. If the diva understands that, there's a better opportunity that he's going to change because he understands the overall mission and the overall goal of the team. If the diva doesn't understand that, if he's not told anything, he just said, run your route this way, don't run it that way, don't be stupid, that diva is going to react badly to that situation because they don't even know why the hell you want them to run a different route. Right?
Yeah.
And conversely, if they know the mission and they're told to run the route differently and they don't, that's a whole nother problem. That's probably trying to find an expression that's not offensive to somebody. That's probably cutting time, I guess.
So, what is if you're thinking about a lot of times when people go to sell the office, they're always thinking before I sell my office, maybe I should upgrade the pano into a CBCT. Yeah. I should get digital X-rays. I should remodel. What do you think the older guys like me should be thinking if they want to sell their office, instead of just calling you up and saying, "Hey, surprise, Grandpa's dead, and we need to sell his office." I'm sure when the NDP, National Dental Placements, gets a call or faxed an obituary, that's very different than I want to plan ahead. And then if you were a young dentist, same thing. I think if you were opening up a practice, again, what would you say about these big ticket items? When you start an office, do you need a CAD CAM, a CBCT, and a laser? And if you're getting ready to sell your practice and transition out in the next 5 years, do you need all those big things? You got 1,900 clients. Do the big boys and girls who wear their big panties, who take home the $250, $350 on up, do they? What do they have in common?
Well, what they have in common is they do invest in their practice. They will always invest in their practice. They're investing in themselves first by even coming to Cain Waters, and they're certainly willing to invest in their practice. And that could mean equipment purchases. I have no problem with anybody buying anything related to the practice as long as there's a plan for it, as long as we understand what the hell we're doing. How is this thing going to pay for itself? Do you want it just because you saw somebody talk about it on stage and you don't even know how to use it? Do you want it because your friend has it and you still don't know how to use it? Or do you want it because, you know what, it can lead to this, it can lead to this, it's going to help me sell more dentistry, and each time I use this, each time I scan this patient, I'm going to get this much, I'm going to get this much, and we're going to move on down the road to helping me produce more dentistry. If that's one of the answers, if it's well thought through like that, and you understand what exactly that machine is going to do for you and how you're going to use it, I don't care if you're 15 years old or 55 years old, it's going to work for you if you're dedicated to it. I will tell you though, it's also on the back end, on the first question you asked about the older guy, you're not going to get your money out of whatever you buy, right? It's just like putting a new paint job on your house or putting new blinds in your house before you sell it. You're not going to get dollar for dollar out of that. Let them come in and kind of help rehash the equipment. And if it hits you a little bit on the valuation, it hits you a little bit on the valuation. But most of the good practices are not afraid to invest in, and certainly in technology. And I'm kind of nervous even saying that because there's a lot of irresponsible spending out there. If you don't know what it does, and you don't know what it costs, and you don't know what it's going to produce for you every time you use it, you probably need to have some more conversations before you do that. And these things sound simple, they sound dumb, Brett. Of course, I'm going to know what the hell it does before I buy it, but you might be surprised at there's a lot of these pieces of equipment have a lot more functionalities than you might think. And I'm a big proponent of a lot of them. So when you're thinking about selling a practice on the backside, even before we get into the numbers and the nuts and bolts of the equipment, you got to figure out what the goal is. Determine the goal of what you want to do. So Christy Ratcliffe and I actually head up the NDP corporate sales division too. So that's kind of the other hat that I wear around here. And a lot of the conversations we have are just basically high level, like what are you trying to accomplish by selling this practice? What is it going to do for you? Is it curbing some fear that you have? Do you want to take some chips off the table? Do you think dentistry is going to cease to exist in 3 years?
What's that other hat you wear? You just said that real fast. What's the other hat and who is that with?
Yeah, so NDP as a transition service, and NDP corporate sales helps doctors understand the differences and helps analyze the options they have when selling to a non-private buyer, like a corporate buyer or a DSO.
And who do you do that with?
Christy Ratcliffe and myself. So Christy Ratcliffe runs National Dental Placements right now, along with Charles Loretto. For years, they've been doing private-to-private sales. Christy Ratcliffe and I now help people understand and help make transitions from independent into the corporate world. And so we know a lot of the DSOs, and they're not all created equal. A lot of the ones that we work with, we are really, really good, really, really good companies, and they take care of their people. But we still need to have these conversations because, like I said, Howard, we have a lot of conversations. I got this letter. What do I do with it? Is this letter the DSO? Well, or is this letter the broker? Well, I don't actually know. Well, this broker just wants to sell your practice like a real estate agent wants to sell your house. Maybe he can help you sell it. Maybe he can't. Maybe we can help you sell it. But we need to understand first, what is your goal? Like what matters to you right now? Why are you selling? Is it money? Is it risk? Is it fear of missing out? Is it because your friend told you he got 700 times for his practice, even though there's no way he did? We can kind of help you walk through all those things. And so you need to have these, it does help to have these conversations before, like you said, before grandpa dies and you got to sell his practice somehow. These transitions are going to take a few years if you want to do it right. Just like in real estate, if you're never in a hurry to buy and you're never in a hurry to sell, you're probably going to be okay. But as soon as one of those things isn't true, you have a little bit more risk. But let us help you understand what the risks are and how that lines up with your financial plan, how that lines up with your goals. Not just a simple transaction. Hey, I'm going to get the most money out of this guy, so I'm going to go here. It's much more important than that. Sure, we'll help you get the most amount of money possible, but what does life look like afterwards? And what are the things that matter to you? Is it days of the week that matter? Is it in health insurance that matters? Is it money? Is it, the name on the building? There's all these different things that are happening. And a corporate to private sale is a very different animal than a private to private sale. So all those things, no matter who you're selling to, get that practice as profitable as possible. Show the world that someone else can work in that practice with you. If you got a $4 million practice and you're the only producer in that practice, it probably makes sense to show a potential buyer that someone else can work in that practice. Maybe it's worth having a conversation about getting an associate in there. Maybe it's worth understanding, getting all your charts in order, making sure your processes are in order. How much unscheduled treatment do I have that I can kind of help? How much unscheduled treatment do I have that I can cultivate prior to this sale that'll kind of blow up my multiple?
Well, why I would love to get Christy Ratcliffe, CPA, CVA. You know why I'd like to get her on the show? Because all these dentists have all these insane rule of thumbs. Well, if your practice collects $1 million, that's what it's worth. No, buddy. What if your practice collects $1 million and you lose $100,000 a year, and another office collects $1 million and takes home $100,000 a year, and this one collects $1 million and they take home $400,000 a year? Yeah. So there's so many rule of thumbs. Tell Christy that if she ever wants to come on the show and get rid of all these rules of thumbs. In fact, that's what we should call the show. Getting rid of all your thumbs.
That doctor dentist information highway. I don't know where that information comes from sometimes, Howard, when the dentists are talking to each other about multiples and finances and things, but it's a little inconsistent sometimes. And I think I think it's also kind of dangerous because if you start believing those things without understanding the details, you're going to be, you could potentially be in an interesting situation. So, we can have those conversations with you, Chrissy and myself. We have different backgrounds, but we kind of complement each other nicely on these conversations, understanding what do you want to do. You're not going to get some crazy multiple. These are very, very smart people that are buying your practice. They're not going to they're not going to make a bad deal just because.
They're not going to overpay for it. That's the bottom line. If anybody's going to overpay for anything, it's going to be a physician, a dentist, or a lawyer. It's not going to be an MBA or somebody from private equity or somebody with a CPA.
Not a ridiculous amount. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
They will pay if you. All you got to do is put yourself in the buyer's shoes. So if you've ever bought a practice, if you ever entertained bringing on an associate, what are the things that you're worried about that are making you hesitant towards buying someone else's practice? Well, if I buy this guy's practice, now he gets disincentivized and he leaves, or he doesn't produce the same way, or his patients leave, or his referral base doesn't like me anymore. All of these things are things you need to think about. All the questions that I get asked, all you really need to do is put yourself in the buyer's shoes, and the more risk you can mitigate for the buyer, the more he's going to give you, the more money he's going to pay you. If he's worried that you're going to go away, then he will make you work back for a certain amount of years in a contract, and he will pay you more because of it. If you want to quit tomorrow, you're going to get paid less. All those different things. Help me as a buyer mitigate my risk when I'm buying your business, and I will pay more for it because it's more of a sure thing and a better asset for me to buy.
So if you go to his website, I can't believe we went over an hour. If you went to his website, it's elitedentalalliance.com, and you go to the vendors. I mean, it's American Orthodontics, Brasler, Carestream, Crest, Crosstex, Dental Phone, Elite Patient Financing by Green Sky, Health First, Coles. I mean, it's everybody. It's NSK, Phillips, Staples, Vitality, Young Innovations, Zest, Benco, Bank of America, ADP, Benco Net, Britiva, CEDAR, CEDR, HR Solutions. Cedar, right up the street here in Tucson.
Yeah, that's right.
In fact, Clarion Financial, CWA, Dental Enhancements, DDS Lab, Dental HQ. I mean, the list is just, it's front office rocks. I mean, my gosh, Lighthouse, Inspired Hygiene, Muller Media, NDP, Open Dental, that's what I use. Ortho Bank, Ortho Brain, Paycheck, Practice Mojo, Prosper Dent, Smile More, SoFi. I mean, basically, you should have a list of who you didn't get. That'd be easier. Can you just have a list of, sorry, we ain't got that one?
Well, you'll notice there's only one or two players in each space. And those are brand names. I would put our vendor group up against anybody's in the space, DSO, non-DSO, anything. These people are dedicated to the independent practice. They proved their dedication to the independent practice by getting on board with us, understanding our mission, and wanting to help the independent practice. All those people you mentioned, we have predetermined deals with each one of them, and they're going to give you that white glove service that we demand from all of them, and they are just spectacular. I trust every single one of them with every one of our doctors, and if I don't, they're not going to be on there. If they don't pass any single test, they don't get on there. That's why we only have, realistically, that's not that many vendors, and it's because this is a close-knit family. Our members are part of our family, and so are our vendors. We're keeping everybody happy in this sunshine, fairy tales, and unicorns, Howard. And
the other thing I'll say is Dallas is it's central. I mean, if I look back, everything I did, I have a million miles on two different airline companies. I mean, living down in the corner in Phoenix or San Diego or Miami or Seattle or Boston is not smart to do what we do. I should have lived in Chicago or Dallas, and Chicago is miserable and freezing cold. And you live in the perfect deal. You're a 2-hour flight from anyone. So again, this is all I'm going to say to you. If you don't know your numbers, and if you don't have a full-time CPA dedicated to just dentistry, you're an amateur. And nobody is suggesting that we go back to the 1900s where one universal physician treats the whole body. We're way beyond that. It was long overdue for those guys to die. And anytime I meet a dentist who uses CPA that's doing, restaurants and chefs and farmers and weed farmers, they have no idea what's going on. So find yourself a CPA that only does dentist. And if you cannot find one, you're a 2-hour flight from Dallas on Southwest Airlines, which has a gazillion hotels and it doesn't cost any money. And Daryl makes you take your spouse because I just laugh when you hear dentists saying that the president of the United States should reduce welfare or Social Security or cut entitlements. Like, dude, you can't even stand up to your wife. You can't even ask one person to quit spending money. Oh, but the president, he's supposed to order 100 million people to do it. You can't even tell Muffy to do it. So, get on the plane, bring Muffy, and they will sit there for the whole day. And when you leave, you know your numbers, you know what you have to do. And again, I tell dentists, he even said this, dentists are the only ones in their town that know the difference between geometry and trig, know the difference between cosine and tangents. You know what Sir Isaac Newton argued with Einstein about. You know where quantum mechanics broke down with relativity. This isn't rocket science. Man, if you got an A in trig, and you know who Niels Bohr is, you can figure this stuff out. You just have to focus on it, guys. You got to get your numbers down. And if you win with your numbers, boys can have toys. I don't care if you buy a Ferrari, a CAD cam, a laser. I don't really care what you do because you're having fun. But when you don't know your numbers and you're getting beat up and you're arguing with your spouse and you're starting to not spit out the Listerine and swish and swallow, it's always going to come down to your numbers. It's not your hands, it's your numbers. And that's probably the major difference between the NFL and dentistry. In the NFL, if you don't have a set of hands, if you're not an athlete, you don't even get in college ball. And there are dentists who graduated with no hands. But they're such good business people, they can still stay in business. Yeah. So, and the other thing about the NFL is their average career isn't even 4 years. And my God, if you can do this for 40 years and you just make a little bit of money and put a little bit away and save consistently for 20, 30, 40 years, oh my God, you can get so rich on this.
You just need a plan, Howard. You just need a plan.
So if my homies need to talk to Brett for a plan, how did they contact you?
Yeah, go to the website, elitedentalliance.com. You can always go to the Cain Waters website as well. And we'll get you hooked up with a financial plan, an overhead reduction plan, a patient growth plan. And if you're interested in a transition, National Dental Placements will help you transition as well. So it's a nice little ecosystem there, a little suite of services. elitedentalliance.com. Just reach out to us that way, and we'll get you squared away with all three of those.
And on that note, you should at least end. You're in Dallas. You should at least end with a Tom Landry quote. Football is an incredible game. Sometimes it's so incredible, it's unbelievable. Setting a goal is not the main thing. It is deciding how you will go about achieving it and staying with that plan. Tom Landry, the greatest coach ever. When I was a little kid, the Dallas Cowboys was Tom Landry's team. He was the greatest, loved his hat. He said leadership is a matter of having people look at you and gain confidence, seeing how you react. If you're in control, they're in control. And that note, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Brett. It was just an honor to podcast you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Howard.
All right. Have a great day.
Go Cowboys.